One thing I've come to realize in the process of recording, editing, curating, creating these episodes, there's a common theme that runs through every single one. The theme is synchronicity. It's always a right place, right time. A person appears, a connection forms. Somebody acts as a conduit to connect me to a beautiful heart or mind, and then the web expands. Sadly, the last season of the OA was the last season, and I have to say, I think it was actually better than the first. But one of the lines stuck out to me, and I think they had referenced a book, but it was one of the most beautiful sentences I'd ever heard. And they talk about the idea of a garden of forking paths. I think every creator that's been on this show thus far has been part of that garden of forking paths. So today I have on Melinda Lee Holm. Melinda Lee Holm came into my life through synchronicity. I think, gosh, how long ago? About a year ago, I had reached out to my friend Gina Turner to see if she had any recommendations for people to have be a part of WITMA, which was the episode 8 of Radio and Mentee, was our panel, actually. But I digress. So I had asked Gina if she had any ideas of people that would make for good panelists that would be at this kind of synthesis of creative, artistic, but also spiritual and curious. She connected me to her friend Louisa, who is a DJ as well. Gina is a house music DJ, amazing musician. Same with Louisa. Louisa connected me to Melinda. I connected with Melinda on a call, and I just absolutely loved her energy. She is just magnetic is a word that I'd use to describe her. So to describe her deeper, here's Melinda's story. So Melinda Lee Holm is a tarot priestess specializing in translating divine wisdom into actionable guidance. Building on over 25 years of study and practice, she uses her fluency in the language of tarot, coupled with her knowledge of crystals, plants, candle magic, and metaphysical principles to identify and open areas of greatest potential for herself and her clients. Having overcome the effects of a youth marked by chaos, poverty, and abuse, she now seeks to inspire and foster growth and expansion in the lives of others using the same tools that had such a profound impact on her own life. In 2019, Melinda launched Melinda Lee Holm Beauty, creating products with ingredients chosen for their magical properties, designed to integrate spiritual intention into the ritual of our daily lives. She has advised people all over the world through tarot readings, including Jizza and Lama Khyentse Norbu. She's currently working on her first book and tarot deck. I love conversations like this. I live for conversations like this, exploring magic in a practical way and how magic can serve as a tool to help us transcend chaos, to rewrite our stories, to take our adversity and turn it into myth. Melinda is very knowledgeable on the tarot. I've been a student of the tarot for quite some time now, but I tend to prefer Oracle, hence why I created a Mentee Oracle. It's because tarot is such a specific system of the soul's blueprint into form, and Oracle is a little more of a Rorschach test. Those are the ways that I explain the two of them. One is they're both intuitive tools, but one system is a little more fixed and the other one is a little more fluid. But anyway, this conversation is filled with magic, inspiration, insight, and lots of giggles. You can follow Melinda Lee Holm by checking out her website, melindaleeholm.com. All of her social media handles and whatnot will be in the show notes. But for now, sit back and enjoy. Welcome to Radio and Mentee, embracing the eternal now, where minds and timelines merge, inspiring synchronicity, awakening potential, and making sense of change. Thank you so much for joining me today.
Hi, how are you?
I'm doing wonderful. How about you?
Great. Better now that I'm hearing your voice.
I've been really looking forward to having this conversation. I'm just such an admirer of your work and your honesty. And you have such a wealth of wisdom and beauty in what you share with the world. So I think that our conversation today, people are going to get a lot out of it. And just thank you for being here.
Gosh, thank you for that very gracious intro. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. So to kind of dive in, I'd love to start where your journey began. I know the tarot is such an integral part of your path, and we share a synchronicity. And I think, overcoming adversity and looking at these tools as a way to kind of heal.
Yes.
So I'd love to hear about that.
Yeah. Well, I grew up in Minnesota, in suburban Minnesota, and to make a very long and complicated story pretty short, my parents got divorced. My mother was awarded custody. My dad remarried a wonderful woman who I call my mom now. And my mother was increasingly abusive as I got older. So that was a lot to deal with. At the same time, I didn't fit in at school, was sort of bullied at school. And so by the time I was, around 14, 15, I was really in this place of like, there's no place to go. Like I go to school, I get abused. I go home, I get abused. Like there's no place for me to just sort of be. And I was wandering through the mall near my house by myself one day in the bookstore and found the metaphysical section, and it just lit me up. It just really lit me up. And, it was not, this was like 1991, probably, maybe two. So it wasn't very popular, but I really connected. So I bought the Buckland's Book of Witchcraft, the big blue book, the classic, and a tarot deck and a book on that deck. And it just really opened up another world for me where I could have that solace that I so desperately wanted.
And learning the tarot, I think there's so many common misconceptions about what it is and what it isn't.
Yes, definitely.
So for somebody who is still unclear on what the tarot is, how would you best explain it?
I would, and I revise this all the time because I am completely obsessed and consumed by the tarot. So I'm like kind of constantly revising. But my best answer that I'm on right now is the tarot is a language. It's a symbolic, magical, esoteric language embedded in this deck of 78 cards. And the design of it is to reflect the entirety of human experience. Now, in saying that, like I didn't create the tarot, and nobody knows exactly who did, despite a lot of claims to the contrary. So I can't say with certainty that was the intention of the design of the deck. It seems pretty clear that something approximating that was the intention. And in my interpretations now, that's how I'm looking at it. Like, okay, these suits and arcana, the major and minor arcana, all of these things fit together to reflect the totality of our human experience. And when we lay down the cards, different, it's like a choose your own adventure that's reflecting your own life back to you.
Yeah, I really resonate with that. I love the Jodorowsky. He had a video about explaining tarot as the blueprint of the soul, right? It's not so much about like telling the future. It's like learning about the present and who you are as a human being and who we all are, really.
Yes, exactly. And it's, really about me when I sit down with clients and they, like we all have goals and aspirations. Like, I don't want to tell you your future. I want to help you write your own future. Why would you give your future over to me? I'm who am I? I'm just some lady with a deck of cards. They're like, that's up to you. But we can look at your present and really get a very, very rich understanding of what's going on kind of under the surface. And then I can give you tools to move forward and create your own future.
I love that. So kind of like circling back before we get deeper into it as a practice of inquiry for self, on your healing journey, how did you find the tarot to be a healing tool for coming to understand your path? And, suffering seems to be such a big part of, it's the human experience, really.
Yeah.
But so many healers and creatives, it's this vehicle for transformation. So in the moments that we suffer through it, it's so difficult and arduous. But in hindsight and then looking back, it's like that whole wounded healer, like opening up our capacity for empathy and compassion.
Right. And and it's from a very sort of practical standpoint, if you're not suffering, why would you look further? Everything's fine. I think that very, very few people would have like an extra super curiosity into the human condition if their human condition is treating them just fine.
Totally.
Relatively. So it really makes sense in that way. And for me, especially at that time, being a kid and not being able to say like, oh, I'm going to get myself out of this situation. Like for a variety of reasons, there were really no options that I had at that time. But looking at doing readings for myself and connecting in with this system and asking questions like, what is my life's path? And sort of seeing this broader vision laid out was like, oh, right. This is small. This isn't going to last forever. And my only job right now is just to survive. I just need to, and there was at one point in my life where I was like, literally just stay alive until you can get out of this and then go from there. And I don't know that I would have been able to do that without having the tarot and magic and, and the I don't know if you're familiar with the Buckland's Book of Witchcraft, but in there too, like all of these, it's a workbook style, these visualizations, like sitting and meditating and describing, how to envision a beam of white light coming down into your head. And I just remember as a kid sitting going like, oh, okay, I'm alone in my room trying to be quiet and not make anyone furious. And so like, I'm going to do this and I'm sitting and here comes the white beam of light and just feeling my body like explode with this power in this light and knowing like, okay, there's something else. There's something else outside of this immediate experience that I'm having, and that's going to get me through.
What was your kind of breaking point where you're able to kind of free yourself from that situation and really step further into who you want to be or always have been rather outside of the kind of cycle of abuse? Yeah.
Honestly, like it's ongoing, right? Which I think it should be like these human lives are brief and it really behooves us to take advantage every step of the way to keep on that path of becoming. For me, the first thing that happened is I was lucky enough to live in Minnesota, which had just a few years prior opened a statewide arts magnet school. So it was competitive entry. You had to apply for a certain art area, but if you got in at that time, and I think it's changed now, but it was free if you got in. And I grew up really poor as well. So there was no way for me to I'm going to go to boarding school, but I did because Minnesota is Magick and has great support for arts and education. And so I went and lived in the dorms at this arts high school. And that was something that couldn't be argued with. I didn't have, for a lot of like custody, legal, and like weird abusive control reasons, going to live with my dad was not an option. So but I could go and live in the dorms and I would be there during the week. And then I just had to come home on weekends. And that, it really, really changed my life. And a lot of, friends that I made at that high school are like still best friends of mine today.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Oh my God. So out of high school, how did you get to LA?
Woo! I got out of high school. I spent a little time in Minneapolis. I was doing the classics, hitting the substances, and because there's a lot to escape from and forget and to soften when you come out of that kind of a situation. And moved to Chicago briefly, then ended up moving to Seattle, lived in Seattle for 13 years. And then I started, I ended up going back to school, graduating from college, all that good stuff, but was never quite happy or feeling at home there. And I had great friends, great community, all of that. But there was just something, I just wasn't resonant with that place. And I was working a job, producing photo shoots. So to shoot outside in Seattle is like a real gamble at best. You just cannot count on it. So when we shot a lot in LA, basically. There's a lot of resources in LA for photo shoots and the weather can be counted on. So I started coming to LA some more. I had friends from high school that lived down here, would, come and visit them and hang out. And I just started coming down every few months and was so happy. Every time I would come here, I was like, just felt really comfortable and at home and peaceful. And then at one point I came down and did a shoot, and it was a total nightmare shoot. I mean, like dead of summer, August, outdoors, client wants models in sweaters. People are going to pass out.
Oh my God.
I saw a fatality accident on the freeway where like there was a body on the freeway. It was just like so hellish, and 16-hour days and the whole thing. And I realized laying in bed in my hotel one night, I'm still happier here. And that was just a super, super light bulb moment of, okay, get everything in order and move to LA as quickly as humanly possible.
It's kind of funny how those things happen where you're like, well, you know what? This is it for me.
Yep. Like, okay. No further questions. Got it. I'm on my way. Let's do this.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. The synchronicity works and it's not always like the aha moment people imagine. Sometimes it's like, oh, okay, the chaos actually showed me order and here I am now.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. And I really think that LA is a place where if you're supposed to be here, it is, and we have this like, oh, it's LA, it's California, like gentle, beachy. No, not energetically. If you're supposed to be here, the city pulls you here and then rips everything out of your life that is not supposed to be there. And you just sort of like tumble through it until you land on your feet, which is exactly what happened to me. I mean, I moved here married. I like bought a house within months, like got divorced, left the house, needed to find a place to live, like months after that was laid off from my day job with no money in my bank account because I had spent it all on, relocating and furnishing a new place and all of that. And it was just this like, okay, well, here we go. And, you realize in retrospect a lot of times too, like, oh, this is exactly what I asked for. Exactly. And I had been hating my day job and thinking, and I spent a lot of time working retail when I was younger. And I thought, gosh, I really want to be doing tarot full time and, and making jewelry, making custom jewelry and all this stuff. But I can't, I don't have the funds to like make that full leap, but maybe, just maybe if I could like work part-time retail at, somebody's store, but it's something that I believe in and people that I like. And then I immediately forgot about it because, life goes on. And it was probably about 6 months after that when I got laid off and didn't know what I was going to do. Still had completely forgotten that conversation I had with myself. My friends, Mark and Martin, who own Spellbound Sky, they had just opened the store maybe a year before. They were in the old small space and they had just gotten to the point where they needed to hire someone to work part-time in a crystal shop right in my neighborhood, for my friends. So that was kind of my bridge into doing this stuff full time. Well, and really I was doing it full time then. It was just, part of it was for friends. So I worked part-time at Spellbound Sky. There were days when I would go in and bring a book because no one would come in, which is mind blowing. Now, if you've ever been to the store, it's like bursting all of the time. Yeah.
Wow.
And now here I am.
It's amazing. So, through it all and through your practice, have you found, you started with like the Buckland's Classic. Mm-hmm. What other teachings have really kind of resonated along the path and helped make sense of things even more so? I remember reading that, some people pronounce it Thoth, some people say Toth. Hermetic teachings obviously are deeply ingrained in the process too. But yeah.
Yeah, that was actually the first book and deck that I got. And I never know how to say it either. And I've had it in my possession for way too long. But yeah, the Toth deck and book. So that was my intro, and it was, it's Crowley's writing is purposefully dense. Because it was that whole sort of for initiates only vibe that they had going. So that was really helpful, and I resonated with it because I have a very, very academic heart at the end of the day. And so that sort of writing was good for me. And then I, really reading for myself and reading for other people and reflecting on how those cards were relating to a particular situation and why has been the best teacher. Definitely, as I go through like that practice part. And then, Rachel Pollack's book is really, really great, especially for beginners. I really love her book because she talks about a bunch of different decks. It's not single deck specific, and talks about the history of how the meanings have changed over the years and interpretations, which I like. My friend Naha is a great teacher, and I took her tarot class once I got to LA, just as like, gosh, I want to see, I've been studying on my own and reading these books. I want to see how someone else has synthesized this information. And that was really incredible. She's just an incredible teacher and is very much in line with the, traditional Hermetic teachings. And so that was very cool as well.
Yeah. I mean, that's the mind blowing thing about tarot as a system is that there's so many layers to it. So it's like anytime it's beyond the symbolism of the art on the cards, the number, where it lay on the Sephiro, and, so many different ways you can approach it.
Yeah.
Oh,
sorry. Go ahead.
I mean, oh, sorry. No, I was just going to say, I mean, it's mind blowing how it is such an alchemical thing too. So it's like, as you transform, your understanding of it transforms with it. It's, blows my mind.
Yes, totally. That it's this sort of living document inside of you as you go on that transformation.
Totally. Now looking at it, so like I'm pretty adept in understanding the major arcana, but the minor arcana is still something where like memorizing that I struggle with. So looking at the different suits compared to the Fool's Journey of the Way of the World, how do they work together, and how do you kind of like break down what each suit means?
My heart is so happy that you've asked me such a specific question. Like, I could get into the deep nerddom of this for hours.
Yes, please.
So in my view, the major arcana are the sort of bigger energies. And I think of them as containing, like, each card really contains all of the elements. So they contain that energy or the spirit of every suit, mostly with the fifth element of spirit. And then in the minor arcana, through the different suits, we get the more lived experience, something, things that are going to be sort of more obvious in daily life through these different elemental lenses. So for wands, the experience of fire, right? And fire, intuition, action, creativity, magic. And that one it took me a long time to get to a point of really, really integrating how a suit could stand for intuition and action at the same time.
Yeah.
Right? Because I was like, those are different things. Also, I'm like a deeply unsporting person. So my personal relationship with the concept of action is unique. I guess I'll say. But then as I explored it more and more, because I think like, well, where else could intuition be located? It's not, it's not going to really be in earth. It's not going to be in water. It's not going to be in air. Okay. It's gotta be in fire. And action, purity of action in the absence of thought, air, or emotion, water, it necessarily comes from an intuitive place. It's this instinctual place that it comes from. And so that's how I was able to have this moment of understanding how those two concepts kind of collapse down into one energy.
Wow. So then you have, the wands, and then the cups represent emotion, right? It's more like the watery element of things.
Yeah, water, emotion. And that one's usually like the easiest for people, even when I have clients who know nothing about tarot, like the cups, emotion, that's the easiest to grasp, usually because you come to see me because you feel some way. Right? Like and they're like, yes, feelings, got it. Let's deal with them. Emotion. And, and really with water, it is that the fullness of the emotional experience. So, emotions that we experience as positive, that we experience as negative, like that kind of full realm. And then swords, we've got the air element, which is sort of located in the head and throat. So intellect and communication, which are like, again, sort of collapse down into one thing, because when you think about things without speaking them, you're practicing an internal communication. You're communicating with yourself, or, reading a book, like communicating with that text and, taking that in and interacting with it. And then for the coins or pentacles is the element of earth. And that one tends to get a little bit sticky for people to understand, particularly in decks where they're called coins, because then it's like, oh, okay, coins, earth, finance. Well,
yeah.
Yes. And, there's just more to it than that. So the way I frame that earth element is that it has to do with how we experience and build our material world. So yes, finance. We live in a world where money is how we, generally buy things in order to make a home, to put, ground under our feet and all of that. But it also has to do with that experience of being grounded, of like having a place that is home base, having having that foundation. That's all wrapped up in that earth element as well. And then there's sort of borderlands of each, because feeling grounded can start to, take on some watery aspects as well. But as far as a pure earth element, like home, finance, being grounded, having that stability in place.
It's awesome. And I mean, they all work together, because then you say, okay, well, how do I use my intuition to make me, how do I ground in my intuition, or how do I, anchor in my emotions? It's, they tell a big story, I guess, right?
Yes. Yes. And that's where I really, I get very, very, very excited, to the point where I devote my whole life to it. All of those interactions are so exciting. And the thing to me that's the most exciting is that if you accept that you can be told a story that reflects your life in terms of these elements, right? So that your life is not just made up of, a sort of spoken narrative, but that there's like a watery element and an earth element and all of this. That also means that moving forward, in order to achieve goals and make shifts in your life, you can also be using all of those elements. So, for example, like I go to therapy. I mean, like it's 2019, a lot of people do. And
Me too.
Right. It's really great. And I love it. Therapy is an air element process. It's a conversation. Mm-hmm. It's thinking about things and talking about things. And you're thinking and talking about watery things and earthy things and fiery things. But the process itself is an air element process. So there's this thing that comes up with clients very, very regularly that is so powerful where, something will come up in the cards where it's like, okay, there's, this area of your life related to this, that, and the other thing that, you could think about releasing some things. And, I can see this like, the wheels start turning like, what is it? What is it? What is it? What is it that I need to release? And when I'm able to say to people, we don't have just air element here. We have all the elements. You don't need to figure it out in order to release it. And it's this moment of like, what? Like, yeah, just go to the beach or go out into the woods or whatever in nature, pick up a stone and just, put it, whatever I need to release, whatever it's in my highest good to release, put it in this rock and then throw it in the ocean. And the relief that comes over people to be released from that cycle of needing to figure out something is just, it's so profound and it makes me so deeply happy.
Well, it's amazing too, because you're empowering people to, this is the beauty of tarot and oracle and my subjective experience is that by asking the right questions, you get the answers that you need. And the answers can come through symbolically, metaphorically, elemental. There are different ways that they manifest, but this very action of asking a question is so powerful.
Yes, that's such a good point. I've never thought about it in that way, but it's like you're already so far ahead just making the decision to ask the question in the first place.
Totally. Yeah. Some people, that's the thing I love that you mentioned with therapy. I saw this great meme about like, I'm not sure how the age bracket of your parents, but my mom grew up in the 50s and there's something about like the 50s generation where it's like the meme says something like, oh, she's in therapy. And then we're like, oh my God, guess what I learned in therapy?
Totally.
And I'm like, yes, I love it. And there's something powerful about asking, why am I in this pattern of creation? Why am I magnetizing these things? Who am I? These questions are the questions that will direct your life. So using tarot, so it's like tarot is this greater story. And I always say that oracle is like the ink blot test.
Yeah.
So it's like, how do you combine them both and become the best version of yourself?
Yes, absolutely. And I love that you said like bringing in the combination, because that's the thing is tarot is like this very, very specific set of cards. And it's a language. And look, languages are hard to learn. They're even harder to get fluent in. So I feel like oracle, it's like bypassing that and taking it to this, like the ink blot test thing where it's just like, okay, what are you seeing in here? And it can really be, in combination. If you have a reading that you're having, you lay down cards and you're having trouble kind of getting through that language of the tarot and the interpretation, pull some oracle cards for guidance.
Yeah. And the funny thing is too, so, I say a lot, that a lot of what happens in these experiences is you get confirmation. So it's always interesting when you have a question about like, say if it's like a relationship or something, you're like, well, should I go forward in this? And the cards fall a certain type of way. And it makes you realize like, oh, maybe I actually don't want that. Like, thanks for the confirmation.
Yeah, exactly. Well, right. And like your gut reaction to what cards lay down is very telling, right? Somebody else might be like, oh, okay, we can work through this, no problem. But if you're like, ooh, oofda,
yeah,
very good information.
The good litmus test, right? I think that was a good word. Maybe I don't want that anyway.
Yeah.
But I think the tarot is such a powerful initiator into looking at how there are layers to everything, right? And then taking that into like tarot as an alchemical vehicle, but then looking at alchemy as a process and how everything relates. The whole idea of, as within, so without, as above, so below, this whole idea that there are correspondences with everything. And tarot kind of is that initiator into understanding that, and then looking to alchemy and being like, oh, wow, it really does, like metal and days of the week and all of these things. How has that kind of helped refine a very alchemical word, your understanding of alchemy?
Well, similarly to what you're saying, or what my understanding of what you're saying, it really opens up to the idea that everything that we do, everything that we move through and consume and interact with, like on some level, all of it is an alchemical reaction that's going on, right? And so it's helped me to refine, personally, to refine my life in a way where I'm like, okay, if that's true, and I believe it is, then what am I doing? Like eating certain things or wearing certain things or putting things on my body, all of that. And that's why I ended up developing this beauty line, this got like fragrance and skincare products, because I wanted something that I could put on my body that would be magical, that would carry these properties. Like if they're all around us and in everything, why can't they be in the things, gosh, at least that I put on my body and that soak into my skin, right? Totally. And so, it was another, things come up, and our job is to notice when they come up and say yes, right? And so I got a call from a friend of mine who I've known for 20 years and is saying like, hey, have you ever wanted to do a fragrance? Definitely. I've wanted to do one for a long time, because I really, I love complex fragrance. I love perfumes. I love all of it. And I love essential oils in that, but I love the complexity where you can't say, oh, that's rose. Oh, that's vanilla. That's this. I love things that are like really complex and sort of transport you to a different place, which I was unable to accomplish on my own. Right. So we started working together and to develop something that would carry the message that I seek to weave through every aspect of my work, which is that, if you ground yourself in divine wisdom, you have full ability to move forward and, take intuitive action in your life and make changes. And that it really is, one without the other will kind of get you nowhere. It'll get you somewhere, but maybe not where you want to be. But, those two things together are the key to sort of, empowerment, taking control of your life, spiritual advancement, creative advancement, all of these things. So I landed on the trio of frankincense for the divine connection, ginger to carry that elemental fire, intuition and action response, and then Palo Santo to keep everything, clear and elevated. And then we worked for a year taking those three main ingredients and mixing them with all sorts of different, woods and florals and notes and all of this other stuff in order to come up with this complex fragrance.
Oh my gosh. I'm just like imagining it in my mind and just smelling so good.
Oh my gosh. I have to get you some. I really should have got you some before we recorded this podcast. That is my mistake. That would have been real smart.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate it. But yeah, it's like wild how, beauty as ritual and the idea of magic being this vehicle for opening up higher states of consciousness. And it's wild what fragrance can do.
Yes.
For that.
Well, and we know that, it's like a documented scientific thing that olfactory response is the best trigger for memory, right? It's like the strongest trigger to bring up memory. And so that's something that I connect to so much. And I wanted to, I had to fill out a brief of what I want. Making a fragrance is an alchemical process, by the way, so much so. I got to be so weird and out there. It was such a delight. And to say, well, I want it to feel like you are surrounded by ancient wisdom in sort of a dark, cozy place. And I thought that they were, it's like, scientists and chemists, that they were going to come back and say, okay, calm down. Like, what do you want? And they just said, okay, great. Okay, great. Thank you. We'll have some things over. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. Really, really incredible. And then another really interesting thing, just a side note about making fragrance and products generally, is that there's so many different ways to do it. And there's big pushes for, there's just like so many trends in beauty and in fragrance generally. But when we got into it, then we had to start making decisions about like, well, what will be natural and what will be synthetic. And initially, just like, well, everything natural, but some things that are natural are highly toxic or are, like hardwood oils. Well, I don't want to use a natural hardwood oil because I don't want anyone cutting it down any more of those damn trees. Right. So there's all of these interesting decisions to make, and it gets really complicated about like, well, okay, so then if we're going to use a synthetic using like a very, very high grade, non-toxic, nothing in it. But yeah, I don't want to cut down more trees. So then I have to, obviously, like I have paper in my house and all of that.
But I think that's important to understand, is that like sometimes the all natural route can actually be detrimental. So, I mean, luckily science.
Yeah, exactly. Luckily science. Yeah, or is really limiting. It's like because I could have made the decision of like, no, it has to be all natural. Well, then I would have been cutting out a lot of things. And with, people have a lot of allergies more and more because we keep messing with the genetic makeup of all of these plants. So that's another consideration of like, well, are we going to go with this natural version that is potentially going to cause reactions, or are we going to just, go a non-toxic route?
Then you also have the energy setting spray. So how do the two differ? So
the energy setting spray is the same fragrance profile with the same magical ingredients, but it is formulated with water so that you can spray it into the room. And you could actually, there's a little alcohol in it so that it won't drop and stain on your furniture, so that it dries in the air, right? So for me, I think of it as strictly sort of a room product. People put stuff with alcohol in it on their bodies all the time. And it is, non-toxic and vegan and totally safe as well. So you could spray it, I guess, or like on your clothes. But really it was formulated with the intention that if you're in a place where you can't burn something, or if you're uncomfortable with consuming things that we burn to clear, like sage or Palo Santo, that stuff, because, there are some environmental issues with that and cultural issues with that as well, that to have something that you can set the energy of the space that you're in with a spray.
So like looking at again, the idea of like beauty as ritual or fragrance, like even just like how you dress and interact with the world, like for expanding your line and into the future, like what would be the big vision? Like, do you have other fragrances in mind? Do you see where's this empire going to grow to?
Yeah, because there's not, well, and we've got the energy setting spray, the fragrance oil, and a dry oil for body that you spray on the body. Which is really nice and moisturizing, and it's got just a little bit of the fragrance, so you can layer it up. Basically, my vision involves making all of the products that I want to use every day in my life. But yeah, we've got some more. We've got some more stuff coming out in this fragrance profile before the end of the year. Should be coming out very soon. And then we're working on more fragrances because there's been a really great response. And what I'm finding, which is, I guess, not surprising to me, but very, very encouraging and uplifting, is that the spiritual properties come across. What people are telling me is that they do feel, more calm and more connected and, more sort of empowered when they use the fragrance oil, when they wear the fragrance oil, and they use the products. My friend's saying, "Oh, I wore your fragrance oil put it on right before I was going in to negotiate for a raise, and I felt great." And that kind of stuff makes me feel so, so good. It's again, like that confirmation of like, okay, I'm paying attention. I'm on the right path, and let's come up with some more magic potions that can help more people in different ways.
I absolutely had so much envy seeing your fragrance in person because, our dear friend Sarah, it was her birthday recently and her husband Colin bought her the fragrance for her birthday, and just the symbol and the packaging, there's power in that.
Well, and the texture on the side of the box, there's this sort of like colorful swirly texture. That is a colored photograph of that's my tarot table. That's the table that I read on in my home. Yeah.
Oh,
yeah.
Wow.
It's this green obsidian, beautiful, huge slab table. So even that, it's just like bringing every aspect of my practice into the packaging. And, and as we move forward too, it's like all of that, all the properties that I was talking about, those are embedded in that symbol, right? The symbol is the Hierophant's staff with the alchemical symbol for fire. So yeah.
Oh, wow.
So working on, and even when people see that, they just go, what is it? I've got like a necklace that I wear with it, and people like really connect to it. So I'm excited about developing more of those as well.
Yeah. And speaking of necklaces, your jewelry line too.
Oh,
that is so gorgeous.
Thank you. Oh, I love it. I love making jewelry so much. And my favorite part of it is doing custom. So I do, do these prescription pieces where I do a tarot reading for somebody. And then I love making jewelry. I love working with crystals and the energies of the stones. And, it's just another aspect of using these things that we invite into our daily lives to be magic. Right. And I love doing these prescription pieces where I do a reading for someone, and then based on that reading, create a custom piece of jewelry with, stones that are going to be supportive to that. There's just so much that you can do.
Oh my God, that's so cool. I love that idea. So for say in a reading, like if somebody had pulled, or if you had pulled for someone like the devil card and then the lovers next to it, and then maybe the Four of Cups. I don't know how many cards you work with. What would be some kind of crystals that you'd say, okay, this is a good for what you're working with right now?
That combination in particular sounds like just seeing those three cards laid down, I would be like, okay, we're gonna work on untangling some codependency issues, right? Like that is really what's going on, and getting into like a realignment, a new sort of emotional stability that is untethered from these old sorts of patterns. So I would definitely be looking at putting some rhodochrosite would be really great. Some self-love, getting the love energy focused back inward, instead of locating that in another person. black tourmaline. But with black tourmaline, for a piece of jewelry, a lot of times I like to pair it with something else that is sort of bringing light in. So the black tourmaline is, working on draining off, energetic sludge or heaviness, but then I want to fill that back up with a lightness. So in that case, anything like a clear apophyllite would be great. Diamond, depending on what budget we're working with. Quartz crystal is really great for that. Even moonstone can be a really nice one. And especially in that situation where you're wanting to get somebody better connected to their self as an individual entity.
I love that. And I mentioned the devil card because that's actually, I really love that card because I feel like it's the most misunderstood in the deck, and it's about, untethering ourselves to fear and the chains that we keep around our neck when we can easily remove at any time.
My thing with that card is always like, well, I have good news and bad news.
Yes.
The good news is it's all up to you. The bad news is it's all up to you. Okay, I can do this.
The waves of realizing, oh shit.
Yeah, and it is, because it is, some of the most potentially heartbreaking moments in life are when we realize that we could have been free a long time ago if we had allowed ourselves, and that's, there's, and we can either, sort of move through that, or if left unchecked, that can just create more heaviness and more chains and, I'm so stupid. How did I allow this to go on for so long? And all of that sort of stuff. Yeah.
So looking at the deck, what cards do you relate to most? Like, what would you say are your favorite cards within the spectrum?
The Hierophant is my number one, and and fans of some books and decks will be very shocked by that because there are some interpretations of the Hierophant as authority and systems. He was called the Pope in older decks, but here's my take on the Hierophant. The Hierophant is the one figure whose role is solely to be a teacher. There's no one else. And a teacher is a very universal figure in human life. So if the tarot deck reflects all of our human experience, somebody's got to have that archetype of the teacher. And in the original design of the deck, when it was coming about in Southern medieval Europe, the Pope was a figure that was really seen as somebody who has a special connection to the divine and channels this information for the benefit of others. Now, how that played out and continues to play out, that is very different. But that doesn't have anything to do with the core symbolism of that sort of figure. So the Hierophant for me is just this idea of a spiritual teacher and somebody who has chosen to live a life of service and to stand in this continuum of learning and the dissemination of knowledge from a spiritual perspective, which is what I aspire to be.
That's so beautiful. I love that. That's such a great interpretation of that card. I actually really resonate with it too. And it's always the cards that are, I think, the most understood that have a lot of the most wisdom and value.
Because they're challenging. They're the ones that, that make you think more.
Yeah. And if something's a trigger, then it's like, well, what is it within me that is not resonating with this? And how do I come into relationship with that part of myself?
Like, let's explore more. let's see what's going on. And I also, and especially lately, the world is something that, for me personally, it's been coming up over and over and over again. And so I've been like really diving into examining, the different layers of meaning of that card and thinking of it as a sign that you're going through a portal. it's a like a rebirth, an ending, a completion in anticipation of a new beginning, and sort of in this, like a baby who is like in the birth canal, like right in between worlds. Yeah. And I think that it, as I move through it, I'm starting to see it more and more as an invitation to be comfortable with being in between, that the portals aren't usually, just like you're in one and then you step through a door and you are in the next world, that it really is this process. And while you're going through that process, there's a lot of confusion. There can be a lot of discomfort, and that's okay. And I'm being okay with it.
Yeah. I mean, it's really a timely card for the world at large too, being in this space of chaos and what feels like a dark period. And, I'm such a nerd, and I've been binge watching the new Dark Crystal, and
I'm so excited to get into it. I love that movie so much.
You are going to be freaking out. They did such a good job. They did such a good job.
God, I'm so happy that you told me this, because I think I've like low key been avoiding it because I don't I don't know. I don't want to be disappointed.
Same. I actually, when I first tried to put it on, I was having such a heart attack about it. I had to shut it off. I'm like, I'm not ready for this. I'm not ready for it to be bad. I have to mentally prepare that it might be, but it's better than anything I could have dreamed of. And the reason I bring it up is because one of the episodes, of course, like Agra, I'm hearing this in her voice, but one of the episodes is titled "And Begin," all the same.
Amazing.
That's like the world card, it's the cycle of beginning and ending, the never ending story of the human why.
And that figure in the world is it's not a line. You don't start at one end of it and get to the other. Like it's a circle. It's round. You just it keeps happening in small ways and big ways all of the time. Ooh, I love it.
Oh my God, I love it. So speaking of all this in the world, so how can everybody kind of learn more about what you're up to, what's on the horizon, and, beyond expanding the empire? Like, do you have any books on the horizon? Or will we ever see a Melinda Lee Holm tarot deck?
On both those counts, yes. Absolutely. Nothing I can talk about now, but both in the active happening place, which is very exciting. Yeah. So everybody can follow me on Instagram at Melinda Lee Holm. And I think it's the same on Twitter and Facebook too. But I just push everything from Instagram. And that's my website, melindaleeholm.com, which will have everything up there as well. And we're doing a big site update right now. So that'll be good.
Amazing. Yeah. And I'll be sure to include all the links in the show notes. But this has been such an illuminating, beautiful conversation.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you so much for having me. It's been really lovely talking.